Greetings, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, Board of Directors, my integrated case study, ICS lecturer Dr. Sharofi, and fellow classmates. I'm Rakesh Omantaram, metric number 280744. Today, I would like to present and explain to all of y'all about Mr. DIY, the Malaysian sweetheart, case study 3, breakdown and analysis. Without further ado, let's proceed. Let's look into the executive summary, but before that, we must always remember Mr. DIY's slogan or motto is always low prices. Low price is it. So, in terms of the summary, is Mr. DIY was founded by two brothers named Tan Yu Ye and Tan Yu Wei, where first store established at Jalan Tunku Abdul Rahman, KL, Malaysia in year 2005. From traditional hardware shop to mega home improvement company internationally in just 17 years. Tan Yu Ye was an engineer who wanted to become an entrepreneur, while Tan Yu Wei, with Bachelor of Management, was a vice president of procurement, supervisor, director who joined Mr. DIY in year 2011. Yu Wei also delivered the initial idea of starting Mr. DIY to Yu Wei and managed to convince him as well. Hence, Mr. DIY Do It Yourself as one-stop center with 1,000 stores in Malaysia and even more. More than 2,500 stores in various countries and 18,000 items being sold in these stores. Wow. Next, let's proceed into the problem statement where we can see that the problem statement for Mr. DIY has been divided into three. Firstly, rise of e-commerce. Secondly, COVID-19 pandemic. And the third is adapt digitalization, or in other words, adaptation towards digitalization. So let's look into the first problem statement. The new trend of high competition from e-commerce to Mr. DIY is definitely a challenge. And customers going for faster online buying, cost effective, affordable, with no limit and high flexibility will be another challenge as well, which is an issue because Mr. DIY was into facing challenges for this rise of e-commerce. And next, shoppers prefer to shop online than in outlets as now it's the trend, right? Next, let's look into the COVID-19 pandemic. It was really uncertain and unexpected for everyone. The outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic was limited in terms of limiting Mr. DIY's business operation. So it was definitely a bottleneck or a limitation for Mr. DIY, where lockdowns and social exclusions became challenge to retail market businesses. Many retail businesses with including Mr. DIY suffered loss from this. I think most probably we might know as well how was the economic condition of COVID-19 pandemic globally. And next, evolution of customers' behavior enhanced and lead to adaptation of digitalization for Mr. DIY. So where Mr. DIY had to actually adapt towards digitalization in order to survive and go through this competition. Next, we can see the global economic pressure in Malaysia ensured retail businesses had digital platform for sale and buy operations that includes Mr. DIY as well. Well, let's proceed to the next, where we can see about the SWOT analysis, whereby SWOT analysis is the evaluation of the business from the strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. So let's look into the strength. The strength for Mr. DIY will be Mr. DIY has wide product range to 18,000 variety of items with affordable prices. Mr. DIY has more than 1,000 stores in Malaysia and as I said more than 2,500 stores in other countries as expanding stores networks and having a strong brand influence towards this particular strength itself in Mr. DIY. Next, the emergence, which is the weakness of Mr. DIY, is that the emergence of e-commerce platform have more competition for Mr. DIY. In terms of Mr. DIY's adaptation for digitalization was necessary for retail businesses due to consumer behavior that is changing. So it was the weaknesses for Mr. DIY. And next, let's look into the opportunity for Mr. DIY. Mr. DIY's digitalization allowed to tap into the market of e-commerce for wider customer base by social medias and other platforms that is online. Mr. DIY's international expansion promotes product diversification to new revenue stream For an example, more partnership and more collaboration in new markets in various countries. So that is the potential opportunities for Mr. DIY. And now let's look into the threats. So for threats, Mr. DIY's business operation may be disrupted due to economic uncertainty. For an example, previously we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and then now we have inflation from the pandemic, and we might not know when would we go into recession as well. So this will be a possible threat in future for Mr. DIY. And next, change in supply chain and regulation from Southeast Asia countries may affect operations, because as we know, most of Mr. DIY stores in various countries mostly are in Southeast Asia. So we would need to know that in terms of threat for Mr. DIY, it could be the supply chain resilience, or maybe the regulation or the policy of laws in different and various countries. Next, we can look into the financial performance and impacts for Mr. DIY. So I've divided into two parts, where before, that means before they face the challenges, and after is after they face the challenges, which is basically the beginning, and now it's the current and in the future. So now let's look into before and beginning. First quarter of 2022, we can see Mr. DIY's net profit decreased unexpectedly by 19.5% year by year to RM 100 million. Next, the ratio of earnings before interest and taxes, depreciation and amortization as a percentage of sales is 23.3%, continuing downward trend continuously, high as 29% in quarter from July to September 2020. So we can see this is due to new trend and high degree of competition resulting from the emergence of e-commerce, like I said earlier, and changes in the buying behavior of consumers, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, and pressure from global economic issues across the world. So these three factors has lead into high degree of competition, and that is the beginning of challenges for Mr. DIY, and they face the downward trend in their financial performance. It was really unexpected. But then after awakening from these challenges, they managed to now currently have 65,000 square foot warehouse with programmable robots to fulfill online orders faster than manual approaches, resulting in 200% improvement operational efficiency. In 2001, 690 locations nationwide, now 1,000 stores in 2022. In fact, more. Mr. DIY invested up to US dollar of 1.22 million, and now that is equivalent to RM 5 million for design and construction of robotic e-commerce warehouse system, which is very much towards the industry of 4.0 today. Former warehouse was just 800 square foot and 800 products variety, whereas now they have 15,000 square foot facility stores, more than 20,000 items for larger selection of products in online stores, while 23 robots were placed in e-commerce warehouse. So let's look into the development of financial performance and the great impact that they are having now after awakening from the challenges. All right, next. It will be definitely the strategies and solution for survival of Mr. DIY. So these strategies would include in various ways, from marketing, from financial, we have seen just now, and then now it's going to be about the future of Mr. DIY in terms of the survival solely. E-commerce, let's look into the first one. E-commerce digital platform, whereby they would need to establish an online store, which I believe they already have now, which is a good sign. Mr. DIY invests in user-friendly and feature-rich e-commerce platform with implementing digital marketing strategies by expanding product offerings online to stay competitive. Next is to have strong supply chain resilience in terms of Mr. DIY could develop resilient and diverse supply chain by establishing contingency plans to explore alternative sourcing options for impact mitigation of unforeseen disruption like COVID-19 pandemic. Optimum customer experience with store layout. So we can see that Mr. DIY could redesign store layouts for improved customer flow by more effective visual merchandising strategies and enhance in-store experience for more inviting and customer-friendly environment in each country. So we are moving towards globalization, internationalization. We would need to consider that these strategies and solutions are very much effective for all stores of Mr. DIY towards all countries. Maintain low prices with sustainable practices. Mr. DIY need to develop and implement eco-friendly packaging, energy-efficient operations, and responsible sourcing to remain low price based on currencies that is fluctuating nowadays, and promote sustainability in countries as well for being environmental friendly towards ESG as well. Next, customized employee training and development. So we can see that Mr. DIY would need to implement, or they can implement, comprehensive training programs for employees, especially focusing on multiple product knowledge, because they have, first they had 15,000 of product, then they have 18,000 of product, now they have 20,000 of product items. So it's increasing. So firstly, they would need to have the multiple knowledge product for all these particular products to all their employees. And next, customer culture in respective countries with interpersonal communication, having empathy towards these customers and building that interpersonal relationship, which will lead to the profit and to the high income of Mr. DIY. Specifically to compete with their competitors globally, because competitors are always, a step higher. So we would need to actually catch up with them. So that's what Mr. DIY should focus on for the strategy and solution. All right. So next, that's all will be for my case study 3 breakdown and analysis presentation for Mr. DIY, the Malaysian sweetheart. So I would like to thank all of you for your time. That's all from me. Signing off, Rakesh Omantaram.